We are recording, so welcome, Hilary Henderson, to I'm calling my podcast Half-Hearted.
Half-Hearted.
Yeah, so that's what I'm calling it. So you are guest number 3.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So yeah, I wanted to just catch up with you on the pod.
Totally, yeah.
Right before we dig into other stuff.
My
but
religious trauma. That's what we're talking about today.
That's
yeah.
right. That's what this whole thing is going to be about. Well, I'm going to get I think it's Sam Allen to come in, and anyway, I have there are so many religious outcasts in comedy.
Yeah.
It's actually a little crazy.
Yeah.
I noticed it to the point that I'm like, this is what I think I need to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually such an interesting observation. I don't know if I've really clued in that, I don't know if it's maybe I think comedians in general, we're not sane people, right?
No, we're
something broke us.
Yeah. We're such an odd collection of vastly different people, but
Totally.
we bond over this thing where we get to say the most heinous, terrible things to each other.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I love it. It's good. So I wanted to ask, so what have you been? Oh, sorry. So to introduce Hilary,
Yes.
Hilary is a Toronto-based stand-up comic like me, and also content creator,
Yes.
which is a space I'm trying to get more
Cool.
consistent
Right
into. But I think I wanted you on the pod because I think the thing that I really like about you and your, whether it's social media stuff or stand-up, is your authenticity.
Oh,
I feel
thank you.
I feel like you're very much yourself.
I try to be as
right?
much as I can. Yeah.
I feel like you don't take yourself too seriously. I feel you're not afraid to be goofy, which I love. And I guess my first question is that who you've always been, or is that somebody you became?
That's a really good question. I think it's pretty much been ingrained in my nature. So I am, if you see me do stand-up, you'll know that I am the middle child of triplets. I'm the middle triplet.
Oh,
So
in vitro?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was not, the good Lord did not bestow that. Yeah. So my parents were sinning right from the beginning. But at least I can tell myself that they have never touched each other, which I'm not sure if that's good or awful, but for me, at least I can sleep easy at night.
Is that a bit? Because that's really funny.
It should be, actually. I don't have it exactly in that way.
Such a good
but
joke.
yeah. It's well, and at least I know I was very wanted in this world.
Yes.
I was not an oopsie, but
Yes.
yeah. So, but to give you a sense of the goofiness factor, I guess, I do joke about in my stand-up that I have 2 parents and there's 3 babies, and so there had to be one passed around baby, right? And I had the best temperament, and so I was the passed around baby. So I'll joke that my sister was being held by my mom, my brother was being held by my dad, and I was being held by the closest stranger.
Yes. Okay.
and this is true, and you look at family photos, things like that. There's just some random person holding little baby Hilary, and so I don't know if it's a nature versus nurture thing, but I've just always kind of been in those environments where I've just been forced, maybe for lack of a better word, to be around others. And just in general, I love, I feel like the purpose of life in a sense is connecting with other people. And I think I don't know if I was always so mature enough to be comfortable with myself, but from, a very young age, I was a class clown. I was back at my parents' place a couple weeks ago and looking through old report cards, and they were all like, Hilary is so smart when she sits down and focuses and is not chit-chatting with everybody. I've just always been excited to be there.
I get those same report cards.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah. The ADHD kicks up high, I guess, in that sense, where we're you're so smart when you just sit down and do your goddamn work.
Yeah. It's I tried to, this is when I had my office job, and I was trying to, I was losing weight and dressing nice, and I was I'm going to do this job, but this job, I can't seem to do it. I can't, I'll sit in front of the computer and do nothing. I'm you know what? Maybe it's because I have ADHD. And then I took medicine for it, and then
did that help?
No, it made me severely depressed.
Sick. Okay, that's great.
Oh yeah, it's part of what got me to comedy.
Oh right. So I have a similar story of hitting a rock bottom, being so depressed. So to go back to the authenticity piece, I think kind of in my late teens, early 20s, went through a period where I was I need to be successful and I always had a love of, I grew up doing a lot of public speaking and theater and just performance and writing, and that was always kind of what I loved. But then I was kind of I need to get a job, so I studied a whole bunch of economics and political science in school, and I was I'm being a good girl, I'm gonna go get that job, whatever. And I did that, and I was just so depressed. I was so is this it? You know what I mean? And I think for me, the kind of the byproduct of why I'm so authentic is I know when I don't do that, then I'm just so like, you're not happy, you know?
No.
Like, why would you? I think at the end of the day, when you're acting in ways that are not authentic to you, it's because you want to try and prove something to someone else, or you want to make your life look good on the outside for someone else, for some external factor.
Well, I don't even necessarily think that it has to be like an external factor, because like, do you know, have you seen that documentary Stutz on Netflix? No. So it's like Jonah Hill's therapist.
Oh, I have. Yes, I have.
Right.
Love
so,
it. Yeah,
and he talks about how we have like part X, which is that like negative part of us that like wants us to not progress and not move forward. That's afraid of hard work. And that part X is also the thing that makes the snapshot. And the snapshot is that vision of success that you like have in your mind that doesn't necessarily equate with what you actually want. It's just like, it's like that image of like, I had in my mind for a long time, like I got to make an album, like guitar, like music wise, before I got into comedy, I did music. Right. Yeah. So I was like, I got to write songs. I got to do this. Like, and it was in my mind for years and years and years, and I felt like a failure because I wasn't achieving it. And then it was like I met a guy who was really into music, did music like pro, and I was like, oh, that's what somebody who's really into music looks like, and I'm not even close to that. Right. And so it's like we can invent something else for us to chase or like think that we need to do that will make us feel bad. Yeah. Well, and I think like in terms of creative work, right? Like if you have a passion or a drive or something that you're excited about, like follow that until it gets to the point where you're like, is this really? And then, you know, like maybe the vision that you had was you being on stage, right? Yeah. And you still are on stage. You're just, and you're entertaining and you're performing, but you're using different talents and abilities to do that. And I think we all have to do what comes, I don't want to say most natural to us, because there's always, you know, any kind of creative work, some hard work that goes into it. But like when you're, I don't know, like I was, you know, like wanted to do really well in math. Okay. Yes. I can do math. I hate it. You know, like, but you can do it. Yeah. But why am I going to push a rock uphill trying to do something that I'm not really that passionate or driven about? Right. No. And I feel like that's like the difference with like old parenting versus like new parenting is like parents are like, do this because, right. And like they want to engineer you to be the specific kind of person when like it just makes it worse. Yeah. Well, you have 2 daughters. So how does that, are they creative? Are they showing an interest in we'll talk about comedy? Okay. We'll talk about that. All right. Yeah. I want to talk to you about them. So what I want to talk about first though is what's going on with you now? What's stressing you out about like comedy? Like what do you do? Like what's going on in like Hilary's life right now? Honestly, I'm at a space where I'm just like, I'm very content. And I just like, my goal for the longest time was like, I just want to wake up every day and make people laugh and tell stories. Yes. And like, I get to do that now. And that's like the greatest joy of my life. Like, and so I think like, for me, my focus right now has been with content creation and social media. And I've got a couple of projects that are going to be launching in the fall that I'm really excited about that are more like online, some longer form content on YouTube. And for me, that's really been kind of like the focus, especially over the summer here. For those of you who maybe don't know, stand-up kind of slows down. Oh, big time. Over the summer. Oh, big time. And rightfully so. People don't want to sit in dank basements when the weather's nice and they could sit on a patio. People are traveling. So I really have kind of taken a bit of a step back from stand-up over the summer, which I'm realizing has been like just so much better for my health. Like like the late nights, I don't really like drink all that much anymore. And you know, when I'm out, like I'm kind of at the point now where like there was like when I first started, I would need like that liquid courage to get up. Yes. But for me now, I find it actually hinders my performance experience. Okay. Like even if I'm not like, I've never got on stage like sloshed or anything like that. But I was describing it to someone yesterday of like, it almost feels like having sex through a shower curtain. Like you're there, but you don't really like, for me, stand up and performance is about like connecting with the other person and to like the audience. Right. And I don't like feeling like hazy and slow with it. And I know some people, I'm sure you know some people in comedy, like some people will go outside and like rip like 3 bong hits and then get up and like kill it. I could never. I would fall asleep. I'd say the weirdest shit. Like whenever I get high before a show, it's always awful. Yeah. It always goes terribly. And then, but with drinking, I don't typically drink pre-show, or like it'll be a casual beer the way that I would at any other like get together. But I find if it's a show where I'm like nerve-wracked about it, I'll do a double rum and Coke. Okay. And that will bring me to like neutral. Really? Yeah. Okay. For me, I don't find it holds me back. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think I just I also don't make a habit of it.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I self-soothe through alcohol frequently. That's an addiction. That's we need to seek help for that. Yeah. I think for me, it's like I want to be able to feel that connection with others, and I feel like being inebriated, like, you know, or maybe it makes me a little bit more outrageous, or it's just, I think for me, like many creative people and many stand-ups are like very hard on themselves, and so when say I have a set that doesn't go that well, I want it to not have gone well because, okay, I wasn't on my game, or I didn't read the room right, or like these jokes weren't the right, like, you know, and sometimes things are, you can prepare as much as you can, and, you know, you get up there and it's all right, they didn't like me, that's fine. I like
to talk to people who acknowledge that sometimes there are no win situations.
Literally, yeah. And like I've done rooms before where I've gotten off and I've been like, okay, you know what, I'd give myself like an 80% on that one. Like I didn't crush it. I'm not gonna be the most memorable comic tonight, but like I've done what I needed to do. Like, you know, there was, you know, and then I've gotten off stage and been like, okay, that was an 80% performance. And then, and especially like being a woman in this space too, like men will come up to me afterwards, like male comedians who are friends of mine, and they'll be like, oh, Hilary, you did great. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's not your fault. This room hates women. I'm just like, thank you, I guess.
Did
like,
you take
what?
a vote?
Yeah, like, I don't know, but you can, yeah, they were like,
I'll show you your seat. By the way, how do you feel about women?
Yeah, but well, could you fill out this brief survey, please? Like, what are the 3 books on your nightstand right now, and how have they shaped your view of society? Like, but yeah, so I've had like feedback like that before. That's been like, okay, well, I mean, something like that. Like, I'm not gonna like change my gender before. Like, I can't, like, you know, like that's something that's beyond my control. And also just like realizing like, too, like art is so subjective, right? Like what I think is funny, the way I see the world, like some people are gonna be like, fuck yeah, I love that so much, relatable as shit, like super authentic, like you said, like whatever. And other people are gonna be like, this girl is the most annoying, self-centered, arrogant, annoying, like whatever, right?
Well, you're never gonna, what is it, like 20% of all people are probably not gonna like you to some degree or another, so like you got to accept that. Yeah,
but I think that's probably the biggest like learning journey that I've had to take on while doing stand-up. Because like, do you remember the first time you bombed, Jay?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like bombed to the point where you were like, I think I should quit. Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought I should, like in the first year I battled with quitting constantly. Yeah. Like total imposter syndrome. Anyway, I don't know if I've like super shameful bombed though. Like I've had nights that have not gone well, sure, but like I've never had a night where like nothing worked.
Okay, yes.
You know, like I haven't been like, I've never felt like crying, like, right? Like it was so bad. I'm like, what? Yeah. I don't know if it's ever been that bad. Yeah. I've never felt that severely bad about it.
I think maybe I'm just hard on myself.
Well, no, you could be, right?
Yeah. Cause I think like I've never had a night where it's like been so bad that it's like, there was nothing I could have redeemed myself with. Right. Cause I also think too, if you're, I don't know, a halfway emotionally intelligent person, like for me, like I know, like when I'm bombing, I just will lean into it sometimes, or I'll just be like, oh my God, like you guys are obsessed with me. Like just even acknowledging the fact that it's not going well, because people feel uncomfortable if you.
Well, and that's how you know it's fucked, because it's one of those situations where like the only thing that gets a laugh is when you talk about how bad it's going.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Which, and then you just start roasting yourself for the rest of your 5 minutes, and you're like, whatever, like if that's what people wanted to see.
Yeah, but you're right. Like sometimes it helps when, because this did happen to me actually. It was like, I wouldn't say I had bombed, but it just didn't go well. It was like a battle. Yeah. You know, I went bullet at levity, and it was like a really like low attendance night. And
that's hard because that room's so big, and when it's rooms that are not full, you can feel the empty space.
And they were just like the host said, like, it's weird tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
You know, which it was. And so I got off, and I'm like, and I go to Manolis. I don't know if you met him. And I'm like, yeah, how bad was that? Eh? He's just like, yeah, I thought it was fun. Like, you stop being so hard on yourself, right? And then pros are always so nice.
Yeah. Well, we're always our worst critic, I think, with anything. And I think, like, you know, when I always remind myself that, like, I'll get hard on myself when it's, that joke killed last week, why did it not work this week? What? And you know the kind of reaction that can get. So then when you don't get it, but you have to remember, like, the audience is seeing that for the first time. Yes. Like, they don't know that it crushed last week. They're just like, okay, like, you know, or maybe it was like you missed a word and you didn't quite explain the idea clearly enough. Like sometimes I don't know if you watch back your tapes.
Oh yeah.
But I'll like watch back my tapes, and I can see exactly where I lost the audience. Like in the moment, I'm still building up that awareness to be able to notice that in the moment. And like, you can tell, but I think watching it back, like I watched one of my old tapes from the spring back last night, and like some of the jokes I've since retired, some of them I still do. And I can see like, oh, okay, you know what? Like that was actually good that I put this in that order. Like sometimes it's just about like manipulating. Like I think people don't realize, I think a common misconception is like we just get up there and like riff.
Yes.
And like we're just naturally funny people. I'm like, no, this is scripted. Like I've worked on this shit for months. Yes. I know exactly where I need to pause. I know how long I need to pause. It is very like, even down to like, okay, I'm going to change this verb here. Okay, I'm going to say that differently. I'm going to use an alliteration here. Like it's quite meticulous.
What do you find harder, the writing part or the performing part?
That's a good question. I think performance.
Okay.
I think performance, yeah, because for me, writing is like my first love.
Okay.
You know, and for me, writing is a space where I can be funny, I can be serious, I can hold something, you know, competing ideas in a way. And so for me, that whenever I write, that feels like me in my most authentic form.
Okay.
But sometimes I struggle with on stage of like to the point of authenticity. I've realized that you are always your most funny when you are your most relaxed. Yes. You are most authentic. And I think both with social media and with stand-up, because I am an actor and it's kind of like, all right, razzle dazzle, what's the character, what's the script, like that kind of thing. Sometimes it's hard for me to just be like, okay, like you're in front of a camera, you're in front of a stage, like whatever, but like there's no bit, like just be you kind of thing. And I think that's what people really like connect to. And I find I'm getting better at that with the performance piece, but I think in my writing the authenticity comes more naturally.
Sure. And I always find it's like, once you know the audience is with you, like if you get a laugh right away, you're free to be that person. And then
immediately relaxes you.
And immediately you're like, you're good.
Yeah. What do you find's harder for you?
Writing. I find it hard to find something that I want to like run with. Like I'm very self-critical about like once I have something I feel is good, I'm excited to go tell it. Yeah. Right. And so the performance part is to me the easier part. Like I never like agonize delivery. Like I know generally how it's going to come out. Yeah. But yeah, it's like coming up with something that I like and like building it properly. And because I'm writing for Winnipeg now, like I'm trying to just do it all at once. Like try to build one cohesive piece and then work it. Yeah. Well, and the Winnipeg set, for those of you who don't know, Winnipeg Comedy Festival, massive, I would say one of the big, well, besides for Just for Laughs, but big comedy festival. almost bigger now, I feel like. You think so? Yeah. For Canadian comedy. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because they only really unless you've made it big in the US. Yes. There's a very small amount of actual Canadians on it. Correct. And then, but for Winnipeg, it's for Canadians. Like that's for us. And there's way more of us that get to go. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And it's like, I think helpful for people to, you know, build up their credibility, get a TV credit. Like it's a very, it's a nice honor to have. It's helpful. But yeah, it's interesting because I wrote for it last year and I had a good time doing it, but for those of you who don't know, it's you submit under, I think there's like 6 or 7 topics and you need to have your set relate to one of those topics. Correct. And sometimes you look at them and you're like, okay, great. Like this kind of fits with stuff I'm kind of doing already, or like I can adopt this idea into my, you know, persona or writing or whatever. But with those kind of, for me, like you were saying, having a hard time coming up with ideas, I don't struggle with that part. I feel like I'm like boop boop boop, like I have so many ideas, like of either maybe this will be a TikTok, this will be something that I'll write about in my blog, like this will be like, it's like boop boop boop. Like for me, it's the follow through and like having sometimes like being like, oh, like I'll look through. I've got like sticky notes all over my apartment. Like it looks like a crazy person lives there, and it's just like a few words everywhere. And then like I will just leave it and not come back to that idea sometimes. But I find it challenging to write for a specific theme or under because I always want to write. I want to talk about and I want to write about what I want to talk about or what I'm feeling. I know, day, you know. But it's almost. But what I like about it is that the constriction actually makes it easier. Yeah. In a sense, because actually, I just discovered like a really great writing method. From Greg Dean's step-by-step stand-up comedy book, where he talks about basically like whatever your topic is, list everything you can about it, right? And but then after you've listed that, it's like find something that stands out to you in that list, and then put like a negative slant on it, and then that is essentially going to be your punch premise. Cool. And then you flip it, make it the opposite. That's your setup premise, right? To misdirect the audience. Right. And then like for me, it's like once I get in the flow, then it starts to come out naturally. You start to get excited. You get into that flow. but it's like getting something that's a little bit more mechanical, because I write, at least now, like still very mechanically, like set up, punchline, built, like I craft them specifically, right? Like listing things out, doing charts, like associations, all that sort of stuff. But
you're
at least
very organized in that way. Because I remember you telling me like you had like a schedule of like, I'm gonna write every day. And
I have not written every day for quite some time. It's
you know what, I don't also write every day. I mean, I think I always think of something creative every day, or I have like, but I think sometimes it's too much pressure to put on yourself. Like then you're sitting in front of the computer, or you're sitting with your notebook, and you're like, okay, I'm supposed to be writing, and you're like,
exactly. It's like I built the snapshot. I have to write every day, right, in order to be good. And if I don't do that, right, and then so I'm just trying to be a little bit more easy. And I'm actually kind of focusing on, like you were saying about like drinking and stuff. I've actually like made the decision to start like being a little bit more healthy.
Cool.
Like eating better, like working out on like a regular basis, and trying to like get my mind and body in a place where they can do those things rather than like struggling through feeling like groggy and tired and blah.
I love a wellness routine. Like I will literally not shut up about how much my sleep routine and my morning routine has like changed my life, because I really think if you're not, with anyone, if you're creative, if you're not like any type of work, right? Like if you're not taking care of yourself and your physical and your mental health, like I'm not funny, I'm not a good friend, I'm not a good employee. Like I can't do anything unless I'm taking care of myself in those ways.
Well, and it's the misconception that like doing Wordle will make your brain healthier, right? Rather than like
maybe
giving
stop
it
the
good
tequila
food.
shots every night. Like
So this week, it's been a little much. The kids were at my in-laws last night.
Okay, nice. Did you and wifey have a date night then?
That's right. We went to the distillery, had some Mexican. It was fun. Yeah.
Okay, nice. That's really important. That's
the
great.
Mexican place there has Corona on tap.
Oh.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so switching gears slightly, what made you decide to, because I think this is really smart, because what I've been saying, I say to people all the time in terms of comedy, is the old system is the old system, referring to trying to make it through the clubs and waiting for other people's approval to make it, opposed to like the numbers are doing the talking now when it comes to social media. And like you're one of the few who's really make it like an obvious concerted effort to do content. So why are you going that way? Like I guess like what's your goal? What do you want to do?
My goal, like if I like close my eyes, like Hilary 10 years from now, I think live performance will always be a component of what I do.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll necessarily take the form of stand-up. What I'm realizing is I love being on stage. I love like, having that energy. Like there's nothing that replaces that. But what I really prefer and what I feel more relaxed doing is like this kind of stuff, like having one-on-one, 3-on-1, 4-on-1 kind of conversations with people. And so my dream, I would love to have like some sort of, I'm calling it a talk show right now. It's not really a talk show, but like something where I can like tell interesting stories, like make people think differently about topics that I'm interested in, with like still injecting humor and like my communication style within all of that. And so with like the social media stuff, that's not really my end game, like being like TikTok fan or whatever. It's like, but I think that's like a good, almost like marketing tool for myself. And like, it's funny when I think of like, this is a business, which I've only recently started doing. The product in a sense is me, is my personality, is to an extent my friendship almost, that I like lend people through a screen, which is still really weird for me. Like I did a show this past week, and like this girl came, and like she was so sweet, and she brought like 9 friends with her, and like had shared my content with them, and they're like, oh my god, like we're such fans, like we love you, and and it's so exciting to me. Like I'm like hugging them all. I'm like, oh my god, like I love you too. Like this is the best fucking thing ever. But then I've also had like people that are kind of like shitty and kind of like stalkerish, that like doesn't feel great either. And so I think like when I think longer term of what I want to be doing and what's going to be like more sustainable for me, I think it would be something more along the lines of like being more in like the entertainment space of like, talk show, that kind of thing, versus like actually stand up. And I love to write.
So things that kind of put you as like Hilary out there.
And like
that's kind of what I wanted to do the podcast. Right. Like rather than like trying to force yourself to be funny and come up with sketches, is just being your natural self.
Totally.
I think that's better.
Is funny, which is like, I don't know if you've ever done any like improv comedy kind of stuff, but like they're always like just first thing that comes to your head, like that's the funniest thing. You know? Like, because when you start overthinking it, and even when I'm writing too, like I try to adopt that where I'm like, okay, this is kind of like a whatever first thing that comes to your head, just write down. You know, you can workshop it later, but like I think your gut instincts are usually the best.
If it makes you like, I always know it's hot if I laugh.
Yes.
Right? Like if it made me laugh out loud, because like when you discover the punchline, it's you hearing it for the first time too in your head, right?
Yes.
And I love I remember when I was writing every day and like really in the zone at the beginning, I was like cackling like a weirdo, like at my desk, like coming up with
I do that all
stuff.
the time. If you see someone laughing to themselves, hope they're a comedian, because I even do that when I'm editing a content. There's a media company in Toronto called Date Night that I've been doing some like streeter interviews with, and I was texting Josh, the guy who owns the company, that I was like sitting down editing some of the videos for that, and I'm sitting in this coffee shop editing away, cackling my ass off because I'm like, it's my work. Like and the thing is like I've already had those conversations. Like this happened weeks ago, and now I'm editing it together. But just like something about like putting something together that you can see, especially with like the street interviews, of seeing like, okay, this person thought about the question this way, someone else, like sometimes that juxtaposition is funny, and just like I don't know, it's the best when you're able to like, yes, you want to be able to make other people laugh and tell interesting stories, but it's such a gift when you can give, like, you know, I've struggled with depression as well, to the point where I felt like suicidal and, you know, been in really dark places, and like the fact that I can just like get up every day and like not only make other people laugh, but like make myself laugh, like I know. It's the best feeling in the world. Yeah, it's the best. Like I remember I was hanging out with Himansu. Shout out to Himansu Patel. But I was because he's a comic who's around my age, and we were just hanging out and talking. He's just like, like talking about like other 40-year-olds. He's just, we could be like those other guys, just a bunch of schlups watching the game. Yeah. Like, no, I'm good. No. Yeah. And there's like, so what drew you to stand up then? Like, do you still do music? No. Okay. Do you want to hear the story? I do. Oh gosh. Okay. So, I always wanted to do stand up. Like I said, I wanted to be a comedian when I was like 8. Cool. Okay. Like they had like the career fair at the school, and then there was like no group to put me in because they had like a chef come in, a firefighter, and like there was no, they like made me, I'm like, what kind of hat like they're like, make your hat for your profession. And they like just made me like make a hat with shapes on it for comedian. And you could have done like a rubber chicken or like a microphone, a spotlight. I don't know. It was kind of a rush job. Yeah. So I was always a performer. Like my family's really funny, and so I did a ton of theater in high school, but I got into university for theater. Oh, okay. And but I also did music, and I thought that was the way to go. And then when I did all the magic mushrooms to become a Christian, I kind of went more in the music lane, right? Because that's. Were you in a church band? Oh yeah. Oh. I did it like big by Canada standards. I've played guitar in front of like 2,000 people, like huge events. All right. Yeah. You were out with like Hillsong United or like. I opened for, what's her name? I can't remember. She did Revelation song. Carrie Job. Open for Carrie. Oh, open for Carrie Job. That is a name. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yeah. Cool. Carrie Job. All Sons and Daughters. I think I opened for. They might be after your exit. Yeah. So I was big into guitars, and then during the pandemic, I was like crazy depressed. I got it. Like there was a number of things that got me to that, and then I had this moment where I'm watching. The Jim Carrey documentary on Netflix, the Jim and Andy one. I don't know if you've seen it. I haven't seen it yet, no. And Jim Carrey is a huge figure in my life because like I was 12 in 1994, which is when Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber came out. Okay. It was like the year, and I had already been watching In Living Color. Like he was my hero. I didn't care about sports. I didn't care about action heroes. Like he was like. Sounds like you were a fucking nerd, Jay. I was. Well, no, it was like this was why my dad hated it. Is because like I'm a big guy. I've got like a bigger frame. Like I played football for a year, but like, and I hated it. I didn't like sports at all. I wanted to perform. I wanted to be a goof and make jokes constantly. That's the problem. Like even before I did comedy, I'm always thinking of jokes at all possible times. Yeah. What is funny? What can I say at all times? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Way before I started doing comedy. Anyway, so he, Jim Carrey has this line where he talks about how his dad was a musician and was really funny, but was afraid to go to the States and try it for real. Became an accountant and got laid off at 55. And he says, like, I learned that you can fail at what you don't love. So you might as well do what you love. That's powerful. Yeah. And I was like, and then I started writing jokes the next day. It just like hit me like really hard. I wrote a letter to the church worship guy to say like, I'm done with all of this. And I had like 10 guitars and I sold almost all of them. Really?
And then, yeah.
You had your own coming to Jesus moment, but it was coming away from do you still identify as Christian?
I don't know.
Fair.
Yeah. I'm still working it out.
Yeah. So were you raised in a Christian household then?
No, but I feel like we've switched roles here.
Correct. Yeah.
No, I was not. So like I said, so my family was not. God, I hope the static isn't coming out through the pod, but we'll see. So I did not grow up in a Christian house. My dad's side is like Catholic, and he was like really not Catholic by the time I was born. And they were not religious at all. I went to a Christian camp when I was like 11, but that was because we had like family friends that took us there.
It was one of those, you're like, we're going to camp.
Yeah, we're just going to camp.
There's like a little Jesus sprinkled in on the side.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know what a regular camp would spend all the time doing. It's like you have, like chapel and singing and and when you don't come from a church background, you're like, what is this? We could be doing so many other things. So no, I did not. I don't have a church background.
Okay.
I did magic mushrooms, and then I became convinced that God existed.
Yeah.
And then kind of like through my own research and like interpretation of the world, I was just like, Jesus is the one. And then I met a guy at a shoe store who was a youth leader at like a church nearby. And I started going. And like the first day that I went, I met like all the guys who would end up in like my wedding party.
Sick. That's amazing. That's, you know what? I think like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, like there are no accidents in terms of like meeting people like that. And so it's like, the fact that you had this, spiritual experience fueled by magic mushrooms, and then like shortly after met this person and we're talking about that, and then got connected with this community, like I don't think those things are random. Like I think
even though I don't really know where I am, like because I'm still very into Jesus, and I definitely believe in God, and I definitely see like what you were saying, like there's a synchronicity to life. Actually, with my first guest, who was a psychologist, like we were talking about that there's like a way that life seems to work, how like there's like exponential growth when you put your effort into like the stuff you should be doing, and then it just like seems to just line up the more that you do that, and like you're messing up when you get like sidelined from that purpose.
Well, I think for me it's your inner voice, your inner knowing, whether you're getting that through like meditation, prayer, going to a church, going to a synagogue, like whatever it is, like I think that at the end of the day is like going back to authenticity. Yeah. Like you're true, what you, if you believe I believe we were all put on earth for like a reason. And like that is to share and do whatever is like your deepest desire, like in your heart kind of thing. And like you will always feel the most aligned. And I remember even like being a very young kid being like raised in church, and like, I pray every night to God, and like my prayers would always be centered around just like, like this is what I want, but at the end of the day, like I just want to like be happy and like serve you, God, kind of thing. Yeah. Which I think if you're serving that inner voice inside of you, whether you want to call that God, your inner knowing, whatever, like I think that kind of is where the juice is.
Yeah, but I feel like in the church, it's like they make you feel that anything that you're doing that isn't directly contributing to their causes or goals are selfish pursuits. Yeah. That's like almost when I got into church, like my dream back then was to be on SNL. That's what I wanted to, when I was in high school and doing theater, that was what I wanted to get to. And then I kind of dismissed it because I perceived it as being a selfish pursuit. And I thought, I should, like, because I love church. When I first started going, I loved it, right? Like, I come from like a really broken home, and this was a place that like essentially took me in.
Great.
And like raised me and stuff. So my question for you, so I have two daughters, and we don't go a lot. We haven't been to church in a long time, but I got one daughter who's kind of into it, and my other one hates it. So where did you fall?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I really, and even today, like I don't know if I would necessarily call myself a Christian. I'm religious and spiritual. I believe in a God. I believe in an afterlife. For me, I think kind of, I don't know, in more recent years, just made some more distance from that, just because it was like the structural like homophobia and misogyny and that kind of thing that I just like couldn't really get behind. And
when did that start to happen for you? So because at the beginning you're into it,
and
then at what point does it start to fade. And how early would you say? Because I feel like sometimes it's like as a kid, if you were raised in it, it's just a part of your life. But then there's a point where you like, because my wife was raised in it.
Yeah.
And so like for her and her brother, his punishment if he did something bad was he didn't get to go to youth group, and hers was she would have to go to youth group.
That's funny. Yeah. See, I think for me, I've just always really loved community, and like church was a way that I could have community. And like growing up in my household where there was like 3 kids all at once, and my sister also has a disability, so that was like a lot of pressure on my parents. And so like we relied a lot of like on our church community, and like there was, you know, people that I would see every week that were like my pseudo grandparents and pseudo parents, and like friends, like, you know, like my parents are still really well connected with like some like friends that they've made in the church, and they had kids around like my age and my siblings' age, and so we would go on holiday with them. Like a couple of those kids, like I consider them like my cousins kind of thing. Like I just like grew up with them, and so I really appreciated like having that almost like extended family, extended community. When I was in church as well, like I did a lot of like church plays and theater, and like I got to develop, you know, kind of my love of public speaking there.
Me too.
And like, and so I think that was really powerful. And then when I was a teenager, I led like a lot of the kids programs, and like it was like stuff where I was like leading Vacation Bible School for like 40 kids, and I was like putting on all these weird like Mickey Mouse hands, like and like I love that stuff. You know?
I love
like,
it. You were so in.
I was all in. I was all in, and like even after that, I've been a Girl Guide leader before too. Like I love working with kids, and it's like, I mean, in that kind of set, I feel like we just get each other. Like we're both just silly, like you know, like I feel like I'm so held and feel like I can relate with kids really well. But I think to answer your question of where that flip happened for me, I actually extended the churchness all the way into university, and I actually used to be on the board of directors for a like international governance church organization, which I will not name, but
that's fine.
It was sick because I like went to South Korea with them. I went to Germany a number of times. I went to Switzerland.
Are they in a lot of universities? Then I feel
so sorry.
It's not is it intervarsity?
No, no. But sorry, the thing I was a part of was separate from a university.
Okay.
But I was thinking like, okay, well, you know, I grew up in church. Let me see what church is like at the university level, to put it that way. And I went to InterVarsity, and then there's another one. What's the name of it? It's like very evangelical.
I don't know. This is the thing, is because I didn't grow up in it. I never fully like was in it because I was never cultured Christian. So like when I went to like Bible college for like a year and a bit, like I would do Simpsons quotes and other kids wouldn't know what I was talking about.
That's lame.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. But anyways, I can't remember the name of this group, but Power to Change was the name of it. And
I feel, oh my God. I mean, it immediately sounds like conversion therapy.
It was. It was. And it was like, I don't know, the church I grew up in, I went to a Presbyterian church, which is like, you know, not as conservative as I would say like Catholicism,
within
but
the evangelical world, it's way on the more conservative side.
So it was kind of like, you know, nobody's like having like praise, whatever. Whereas like this was like moments where like everyone's getting their full body into everything, which like, you know, praise how you want to praise, celebrate how you want to celebrate. Like, but that was something that I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then part of that group was like trying to evangelize like other people on campus, and like I think any faith, you know, if you want any cult, like to stand up comedy, like we're always trying, oh, you should try stand up. Oh, you should try, like, you know, you always want to.
I never tell people to try stand up. No. I'm always like, when I find out another comic had a baby, I'm so happy because it means it's one less person who I need to compete for spots for.
Okay. Yeah. You're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
congratulations.
Yeah. You're like, Hilary, please go have a baby already. So I don't have to see your face anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But I think anytime you're really passionate about something or believe in something, you want to like share that belief with others.
Yes.
And I think pretty much all major religions have some sort of belief of proselytization.
Yeah, like, I feel, except for the Jews. I feel like they could care less.
Yeah,
they could care less if we want to join the team.
they're chill. I think so. At the same time, I was, you know, trying out some of these faith groups in university. My undergraduate degree was in international development.
Yep, my wife too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, so she understands the Christian girl to white savior pipeline.
Oh,
like that is
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And then she spent 4 years being told that she was the cause of the problem.
Exactly. And so through doing some of that work, like it was like, you know, and I myself like did some work in Central America and South America, working for Canadian nonprofits, and it was, I mean, for me, very enriching, lovely experiences. I don't know if I necessarily contributed anything to the communities I was trying to help.
I never thought about this. So I did a missions trip. Like I had been a Christian for like a year and a bit, and we went to Venezuela, and it was like I had never heard the phrase until later, but it was disaster tourism.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that is. We did run a summer camp. I feel like we kind of did something. Like we kind of did like do some helping, but it wasn't like meaningful or like long term.
No, and I think like I think those are good, let's call them like educational experiential trips, right?
Yes.
Because like, you know, if I also like grateful for my upbringing, like my parents, you know, we never went to Disneyland or whatever. Like the first major family vacation I can remember, like my parents put us all on a plane and we were like 11 years old and we backpacked through rural Chile for like 3 weeks. It was sick. But I always had like this awareness of like, not everybody lives the cushy life that I do in suburban Ontario.
No, I spent my whole life feeling, because my parents got divorced so early, like that cushy life was what I had been deprived of. That was how my attitude.
Oh, do you and so when you found community in church, did you feel like that sense of deprivation was removed a bit?
Yeah, I think it was removed a bit, but what I liked about it was acknowledged that like when parents get divorced, they like, kids are resilient, it's fine, blah blah blah, and it's like, it's not.
That's hard. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Are you an only child?
No, I have a younger brother, and then so we have the same parents, and then both my parents got remarried and had more kids. So my dad had a daughter. My mom has two sons.
Yeah.
But they're like your age.
Right. Okay. That's a lot of variety. But that must have been hard too, because I think when you're always the oldest kid in that situation, like you feel, you know, maybe you felt in a sense responsible for your little brother. Is that what's happening?
No, it was more like, no, it was what I feel like, and I feel like I've only articulated it this way now or like recently, is that like, I think I felt like I was essentially orphaned because like, yes, there are two families now, but I didn't really feel like I belonged in either. Oh. Right. Like you kind of, because I had really awful, like rebellious teenage years and fought with my parents. Like I knew that they wanted me out. Right. And so like, you don't really feel like you belong to either of them. And in church, like I belonged.
Right. Yeah. I think anyone, when we, you know, whether it's because of childhood or other, you know, like we want connection, we want community, like that's such a natural, beautiful part of human life. And like I was reading or was listening to a podcast earlier this week that being lonely can actually take up to 10 to 15 years off your life.
Sheesh.
Right. And so like not like that is a basic need for us as humans. And so I think like people, whether it's like, you know, cults, religion, whatever, the line between those can sometimes be blurred. Like, it's like, this is a place where I can go to feel safe and connected with others. Like, of course, that's going to be valuable. And I think like now, I mean, I'm really grateful I had that space growing up. And I think I'm realizing like I do miss having that like sense of community. And like I have some of that with like stand-up people. I have some of that with like work people and like friends. And like wherever you go, there you are. You can make pockets of community. But it was like, what I really appreciate about being in church specifically is that I was forced not to be so insular. And, you know, now my community, like, you know, most stand-ups are in their like 20s, 30s, kind of, you know, like that's a age demographic. And I'm sure there's like other things that go into, you know, the narrow demographic of peoplehood is. But when you're at like a church or like, you know, there's people of all ages, all walks of life, like that I found really beautiful and supportive. And
that's what, like, when I got into comedy, one of the first things I told myself is I'm going to find a mentor. And I feel like in regular and in church, that's like kind of built into it. Like find somebody the same gender as you who's about like 2 life stages ahead.
Yes.
And have that person like be a part of your life. And like, I wanted to find that in comedy, and I feel like so many people are deprived of that. Like the community part is like I've been doing like karaoke lately. I haven't done karaoke in a long time, but there's this one place that does it, and like it just I felt like I was in church again, but like I could actually sing. Yeah. You know, like so. Yeah. Yeah, the whole Bruxy thing messed me up. I don't know if you know about that. All right, we'll talk. That's fine.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so you're in university, and then so when did things start to be like, I'm not sure about this whole...
So things started to shift when I was doing a lot of like studying in school, where it was like a lot of, let's face it, a lot of like international development work, mission work, whatever, like has its basis in mission work, basically. And I became just very uncomfortable with this idea of, I was also working for this larger international organization at the time too. We were doing like governance around like, some of it was like women's participation in church. Some of it was like, you know, higher level responses to like, what does the church think about like this political issue or like climate change or like what's the stance on that? So it was like really interesting, and it was combining like, you know, my international development interest as well as like this faith background that I had. And it just became very clear to me that there was kind of, I don't want to simplify it in saying there was a divide between like high income countries to low and middle income countries, but like Christianity like is not the, like, you know, we've gone around the world spreading that to a lot of marginalized communities, and there's like countless instances throughout history where like that has done actually so much more harm than it has good for the community. I remember there was a case study we read in school that was talking about, I think it was in Indonesia, a group of missionaries went, handed out Bibles, did nothing to actually like help or try and provide for or raise money for like the needs of actual people. And then they came back months later. None of the Bibles were around anymore. They asked them what happened. They had all burned the Bibles because they needed fuel. They needed things to cook with, and they needed a way to warm their places. Like, so the kind of just like very tone deafness of like coming in, and there was, I think, like this sense of this like arrogant, greater than, holier than thou, and at the same time too, kind of realizing like how much for me like the church like oppresses women in a sense of like, you know, I grew up in a church where like I did have a female minister, but that's like very uncommon. Yes. And like I went to a Catholic high school, no women in any type of leadership, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. Okay. Like anywhere else in society, we would be like, this is fucking shit. Like, what are we doing? And like church is like the one place in society where you can almost like get away with being outwardly sexist.
Yeah. I mean, I think like if I was to steelman it, they don't perceive it as such.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because you're poor and defenseless, and that's why we need to lead.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But and I think like the way I think the way men and women lead, like let's just say in like a corporate sense, is different, right? And I don't think like one is necessarily better than the other, but like we objectively need both. Like from before, you know, like when we were all living in like agrarian kind of hunter-gatherer societies, like we like exactly hunter-gatherer, like it's like, okay, you had your own respective, like, you know, I just, it's so icky to me that like that existed, and that was, you know, and then at the same time too, like going to university and being around people who didn't share the same faith background as I did, I was kind of like, okay, well, you know, I kind of like what they're saying too. And like I had like friends from just different like worldviews, and at the same time too, like a lot of my friends were starting to come out as queer, and I was like, well, I'm supposed to, like, these people are sinning now, which I just like didn't believe, because
they came out as queer. Does that mean they're straight now?
Yeah, no, they're still gay. They're still gay. They're
You said queer, not gay. If they said gay, I would assume that they were still in it.
Yeah. No, but like, and it was just, I think there was too many kind of competing ideas that I was like, I don't really know if this is the place where I want to be. I still think like the things that I still have in my life today that I find really valuable is like knowing that I need to develop a sense of community, and just like the types of conversations I like to have with people are like these kind of stuff. Like getting to, like, I love talking about like, do you believe in an afterlife? Like, where do you think, like, I think those are such good things to be like reflecting on. And like, just, I think every religion has like these ideas of like, love yourself, love other people, love some higher being, love the environment. And so like, that's all good, you know, like if you like being generous, like it's a great quality.
Well, and I find it so disappointing, not in the person, but the phenomena that like when they leave a faith or their religion or whatever, that they feel that they need to become an atheist.
Yeah, which I would not say I'm atheist at all.
No, right? No. And I don't get the need, like I need to shed it all to get rid of it. And it's like, to me, almost what happened is the opposite, in the sense of like my perception or understanding of what or who God is just bigger
than
what Christianity has to offer.
I agree. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Where it's like, I like as the teachings of the religion and Jesus and the Bible, like I'm like, no notes, great. Like, but the way that it's been like institutionalized and like what we've done to it with like society.
Well, it's more like, I was listening to a podcast. I'm obsessed with Mormons.
Cool. Okay.
It's not my background at all, but I learned about them in Bible college and I'm fascinated. Their history is crazy. But there's this great podcast called Mormon Stories, and it's about people who leave Mormonism. And so they were interviewing a guy who's like a Bible scholar and just talking about how like we kind of pick and choose the things that we like want to harp on and the things that we don't, right? Like in the sense of like we don't make women wear head coverings generally, but it's not okay to be gay. Right. And we do this all the time with all these little things. Like for me, or
like eat fish on Fridays, but like
eat fish on Fridays,
we're just picking, like, we're
just picking and choosing. And it's like, because it used to be, I don't know like how deep you go into like theology stuff, but it's like, it used to be the Old Testament was civic, ceremonial, and moral laws. And then the only thing that converted over was the moral laws. That's why like certain things didn't carry over and some did. But it's like, those weren't like labeled in the Old Testament as to which ones fall under which categories, right? So how we choose to bring them over, and that was always like the thing that I wrestled with, was the fact that like on the surface, like going into it, I never disliked gay people or thought anything weird about gay people. And then or evolution, like when I became a Christian on my own, it was just like I just assumed whatever way it happened, God did it, and I was like, that was the extent of my like thinking about it. And then like I went to some of the guys at my small group's house and they were playing
small group. That's a trigger word.
I know, right? Small group. And then we and he showed us this video by Kent Hovind. Have you seen this guy?
No.
He's like, and so I'm watching this video. I'm like, wait, Christians don't believe in evolution? And he's like, no, bro. And like, as if I was the idiot.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and if you, and there, it's just.
But I like the way that I've come to like understand that, like for me, I don't actually think it's a dichotomy of like evolution creation. Like I think, you know, if you want to believe like a higher being made these things, but it's like, was the world made in 7 days? Fucking of course not. Like literally no. Like, you know, but it's like, you know, is 7 days like a metaphor or like something that like we can use to like help our understanding of the world? Like, sure, you know, like I don't think we need to take things so freaking literal.
Well, and that's just it though. It's like, how do I use it now? Like, what do I want to use it? How can I apply this now? And that's kind of where I want to be. And like this whole theme of Bible literalism, like runs really strongly. And just, so sorry, I was going to say my breaking point, which I didn't know it was the breaking point. But I was listening, there's this podcast called the Bad Christian Podcast, and they were talking to this guy named Chris Date, and he runs a website called Rethinking Hell. And it's basically, his view is that that the eternal conscious torment, the traditional hell view, is not actually what the Bible teaches. Like if you like John 3:16, for God so loved the world that
he gave his only begotten Son, and everyone who believes shall not perish but have eternal life.
Okay, so shall not what?
Shall not perish.
So how did we get suffer and be tortured forever from the word perish?
Correct.
Right?
Good question.
And you realize, oh, I've been reading the Bible with these hell-colored glasses on.
Yes.
And it's like, and then I heard this Chris Date guy do a podcast debate, like this guy named Al Mohler, who's like a big Christian theologian, pastor, huge figure in evangelicalism, and this Chris Date guy, who's nobody's ever heard of, annihilated him. Pardon the pun. Like just destroyed the like. Well, his view. So his view is the annihilation view, which is that like if you go to hell, you just cease to exist. Like that's he thinks that that's what the Bible teaches. And I was like, I think that like if you just look at what the Bible says, I think that is actually what it says. And I was just like, but that's not the view that the church has run with. And I was like, I deeply thought, I think everybody's wrong on this. I think this Chris Date dude is right. He's got all the verses in his favor. Nobody else does. Nobody wants to change their mind about it. I'm like, what else are they wrong about?
Yeah. It's interesting, like when you're saying about like the verses in their favor, like that's where I think like religion is almost similar to law in the sense of like we have these laws, but how you put them together and make an argument and a case.
And where I am now is I don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't even care enough to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where
I was never like deep into like the theological
I
aspects
was like,
of it.
I was so hardcore into apologetics.
It's interesting though. Like I think like understanding, you know, why people think the way they think, why we believe what we believe. Like, but I think for me, like what I've kept from like my religious upbringing has been like the importance of community, and I still pray very frequently. And I think like I don't know if that came up with your episode with a psychologist at all, but I think like psychologically for our mental health, like being able, like prayer in its purest form, I think is surrender, right?
Yes.
Like realizing like this is what I can control, this is what I can't control. The things I'm going to control, I'll do the best I can. But I think with anything, there's an element of risk, uncertainty, whatever. And for me, like just giving that up to God, the universe, Allah, whatever, like and just saying, you know what, I would love for this to work out. I'm grateful for this, but like this is what I, you know, and like I can just, I think, rest easier at night being like, I put like, that out there.
You're making wishes to your imaginary friend. Like when atheists say that, I'm like, no, it's like there are things in my heart that need to be expressed.
Yeah. And like, how do you
like not just the stuff I want, gratitude for the things I have.
Sure.
It needs to come out.
Yeah.
Right.
And I like take the belief of like, you know, we're saying earlier of you meeting these people. Like I just really think, I think of more of it in the sense of like the universe, but like there's not just all these random things happening. Like maybe there are at the end of the day, and if people don't agree with my thoughts on that, that's totally fine. But I think for me at the end of the day, my life just feels better and so much more magical. And like I just can wake up every day, and like I think if you're completely like atheist, like where do you get your motivation from?
Well,
like,
the hardline pastor, I've heard and this is where Christians go wrong. Like I've heard a Christian pastor say, if it's all for nothing, why don't you just kill yourself and get it over with? I'm like, well, that's a little like,
I don't actually think you should be encouraging that.
That's a little rough,
very insensitive.
A little rough too. But it's like it's hard to explain to other people, because when you talk about that synchronicity, those things that you notice, like things falling into place, it's like they only make sense to you, right? But like then there's this argument for the existence of God, which I think is fairly compelling, which is, it's called the God and other minds argument, which is that like I look at you and assume that you have the same internal monologue that I do, that you are not a like sophisticated biological robot. I have to assume that because I don't actually know, right? And so it's like when you have those moments of like synchronicity, or like when somebody thinks that like there's a miracle that happened or whatever, it's like to a degree you can't disprove some of it, right?
And
like,
it's like the point you have about like personal experience, right? Like if I think meeting this person at this time, or even just like I think we like get God and messages from the universe through other people, you know? Because like I've had moments where like I'll be thinking about like something ruminating in my head all freaking day. I'm just like, burp, 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 burp. And like, just this happened earlier this week actually to me, where I was like thinking about something over and over again, and just like trying to like, what am I doing? What's whatever. And like somebody, I hadn't even told them this is what I was thinking about. A coworker was just like, you know what, I was just thinking about, and said something to me that just felt so calming in that moment of like what I was stressed about. And like this person had no possible way of knowing like this was like a personal
like
matter
they just hit on like a theme that's been like ongoing for your last week, right?
Which like, you know, maybe you can make the argument like they actually did know that, they could see me, they read a text message over my shoulder and could see what was happening in my personal, like who knows, maybe, right?
I don't want to live like that.
But no, and like why would you ever want to live with the perspective of I've had some ex-boyfriends that like live with like the perspective of almost like people are out to get them.
Yes, okay.
And like that's such a painful, I think, sad way to live. Like I think sure you shouldn't be so blindly trusting of other people, and like I'm not going to get into strangers' vans or things like that, but like I think I maybe this is because of my Christian upbringing, but like at our core, like I think people are good. Like I think we're good, you know? Like I really
I don't know how you got people are good from your Christian upbringing, because I feel like we're all bad. I feel like that's our default. I feel like that's what Christianity teaches, is that we are like what's the TULIP acronym for in Calvinism, but like total depravity. Yeah. We are totally depraved. And actually,
unless we have God.
I think that we kind of are, though.
Okay.
I think that like sometimes because look at all the big pastors. If you can do the bad thing and you think you'll get away with it, you will.
Will we though?
I don't know. Some do.
Yeah, but
right. We're not all good. We're not all good, right?
I don't think. I don't know. I think maybe when I say like Christian upbringing and like believing that we're good at our core is that like, you know, if everybody has God in them, then how can we be, you know, like, and I think, you know, the 7 deadly sins, like, you know, like whatever. But like, I think when I think if you have, I try to give as much compassion as I can to other people and to myself. Like somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, oh, they're probably in a rush, probably didn't see me, whatever. They're struggling with something, like, you know, who cares? Like I don't.
You're better than me.
Thank you. That was my whole purpose of coming here today, Jay, was to let everyone know that I am perfect.
Okay, I want to be cognizant of time.
Sure.
I want to move on to Hilary. Tell me about dating in 2023.
You know, so when was the last time you were single, Jay?
I was last single in 2005.
Oh, right. It's been some time for you.
Yeah, like I did online date.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I did Christian Cafe.
How did that work for you?
It did not.
It didn't.
It worked for my buddy. He met a girl from California, and they are divorced.
Oh, right.
And she stole my best friend away from me, and now he lives in California full time, and I don't see him anymore. So
yeah, I
kind of got a bone to pick with Christian Cafe.
Yeah. Don't swipe up for Christian Cafe. They will take everyone you love to California. Yeah. How did you meet your wife, if you don't mind me asking?
Church.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first church I went to where I met all those dudes, one of them was our small group leader, and he got asked to be the junior high pastor at this other church. He asked if I would come help, and then that church that I went to go help him with, she was also like a youth leader there.
Cool.
She had a boyfriend at the time, but I knew that it wasn't long.
Did you meet her and know like that's my woman?
I knew I wanted her bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't have enough confidence to be like, that's the one.
No, I mean, like, and I feel like it's weird to say, but like, we're like the couple that always gets compared to like Lillian Marshall, or
I can see. I haven't met your wife, but I can
like
see that.
Chris Pratt, or like April and Andy on like Parks
you're
and
both
Rec.
Pretty funny.
We're not necessarily funny, but like we're big. I'm big. She's small.
Okay.
And it works.
Yeah.
It just like there to get like for us it just works.
Yeah. Cool. That's beautiful. I should join church to find a husband.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you want, like, I tell guys all the time, you want a low body count.
Yeah, is that what guys want? I don't know. Okay. We'll pivot away from that.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like that's like an inherently sexist kind of, because it's like the thing of
some
like,
do.
So maybe.
I don't think it's necessarily sexist, because I don't think that a woman should want to be with a guy who's got a high body count either.
Maybe. I think of body count as just like irrelevant. Like,
it's not necessarily the concept of like the body count, but it's more the separation of the sexual and the emotional.
Right.
I think that's like this is the Christian part that I think they got right. Not that I'm like going full purity culture.
Yeah.
But sex is sacred also too. I think it's important to who we are.
I think it's a beautiful way to like express love and connection.
Well, it's also the act that makes babies.
Sure.
And I feel like it needs to be handled with respect and care.
It should be. You know what? It should be. I agree.
I don't think that's a bonkers statement to make.
Yeah. I think like for me, what I've like realized after, you know, we've all had slut eras to say the least.
Sure, okay.
And I think for this is like, again, my own experience. I know for myself that I never feel great after I do something like that.
Okay.
Like it just doesn't feel authentic to me.
Yes.
It's not, I mean, even when I think of, you know, casual dating, like, what does that even mean? You know, because I think you can have something that's like casual, but like still respectful and like still meaningful. But like, what are we, I don't know. I think like every day we're alive, we're dying. So if, you know, maybe monogamy and marriage and that kind of commitment is like not what you want, but like, why are you not at least trying to find people that you would want? I don't know. Also for women, sorry, men, like the first time we have sex with you, it's usually not that great.
Yes.
And so like, if there's someone that I'm like, okay, I'm probably would fuck this person once, twice max. Like, I'm not really going to get that much from that.
Well, I feel like you got to find like a guy who's a virtuoso, right? Like, I feel like, like you probably know this about guys. It's like you're playing a new instrument.
Sure. Yes.
Right. And you got to learn how to play this thing the right way.
Yeah.
And it takes some time.
It does.
And you're never going to, right? So you need to find a guy who knows how to play every instrument he touches. And that's a gamble.
That's a gamble. But then again, it's like the body count thing, like experience, like what is it? I think also too, like I would never judge somebody for their past because I wouldn't want someone to judge me for mine. And like, I think like the separation between like the emotional and the physical, like, sure, maybe you're able to do that with like a certain type of person, but not able to do that with this person. Right. And like, just because someone's done that in the past, I don't think that means they'll do that in the future. But I think like, when in dating, in any type of, in any friendship even, especially, but when there's sex involved, like you need to be overly clear about like what your expectations are, because, it's hurtful. Like, and I've been in those situations too on both sides where someone thinks something is going in a direction and I'm like, no, it's just, we're just having fun. Or, vice versa. I've been the person that's been like, oh, okay, so we're like dating now. And they're like, no, I actually fucked someone else last week. And you're like, okay, sick. I'm just going to go cry. Like,
oh my God.
And that's like, it's not a good feeling. And so, I mean, to ask you what dating is like in 2023.
Yeah.
I have been dating app free for the last like 3 months now.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really brave of me. They give me a medal once I get to a year. And,
yes.
But I think for me, I was just realizing, and because like my career to an extent is online, like I spent all my freaking day on my phone. Like the last thing I want to do is like sit down on the couch at the end of the night and be like, better find a boyfriend, like that. And I was just finding too, like, I think it's a tool. Like, I think it's how you use it, right? But for me, like the types of connections and like my most successful friendships, past relationships have been like people that I've met through friends or through work, or like, I got to know them more as like a human being before we were like, you want to fuck. So, and that's just how I prefer to connect with people.
Yeah. Well, it seems counterintuitive that the thing that you do at the end, you do first.
Right. Which I don't know. I think like maybe some people like we're all horny creatures, all right?
That is something that
like,
is something to contend with. That's also the thing that like is like really hurts like your impression of like the Bible being inerrant, right? It's like, you can't do any of these things until you're married, but also I'm going to fill you with these hormones that you will not be able to ever ignore.
Yeah. Which like I will say on the record, I am not saving myself till marriage. I'm sorry, mom and dad. I don't know. Even now where I'm at a spot where like I just don't really like any type of like casual connections or I don't know. I feel like that's such an ambiguous word, but like when I'm like, even the conversation we're having today, we're getting into it. We're getting deep. Like this is like a good connection that we're forming here. Right. Like, and same thing with my friends. Like if I make a new friend, like not that I'm like trauma dumping and being like, these are all my story, but but I like to be able to connect with people in the way of like, we get each other. This is cool, Yes. And for me, like, I think also too, like I'm a monogamous person. Like even when I have been in stages where I've been like dating a few people at once and like not to the point where anyone's my boyfriend and I'm cheating or whatever, but like that just doesn't feel good for me. One, I have ADHD and I can't remember that many people's stories. Yeah. Also, like I'm just too busy to like make time. Like, when you're first getting to see someone new, you're seeing them like at least once a week, maybe more. And like, I just don't have the time to commit to like seeing 5 people once a week. Like,
so right now, like, are you dating for marriage or what am
I dating for right now? I'm not dating at all right now, period. I think like I had someone back in the spring that I was like seeing just like casually, and like that ended. And then, I removed myself from the dating apps. And so, I mean, I guess I have mixed thoughts on marriage. I do want to have like a long-term committed partnership. I don't know if that necessarily needs to be marriage for me.
Sure.
And I do want to have children. I do want to have a family. And like, I think single moms do the Lord's work, but like, that is not something I think I would choose for myself. Like, I don't think I'm going to be like getting like artificially inseminated by like a sperm donor. Like, I just don't, I mean, I'm only 26, so I've got
time.
Fertile years left.
You got time.
But so I think like what I'm looking for is like, I you know, in my early 20s, it was kind of like, are you hot and can you make me laugh? Like that was the only criteria. You don't even need to be hot, to be honest. Like, and also you didn't even need to make me laugh. Like I would be happy to carry the jokes. Like, don't worry about it, babe. But now I think I am realizing, like, I think I want, I don't know, maybe if this is like you're saying dating for marriage, but like
I like, more like mean like what is wrong with boys? Because I feel like that's.
I mean, I think it's not just guys. Like, what's wrong with girls also? Like, I think, like, women, like, we love to be like, oh, like, men are the word, whatever. But, like, you know, I've been doing therapy and I've had some moment of self-reflections where, you know, and we all do, where you're like, you know what? That was not my finest work, right?
Sure.
And I think, like, what I would say, like, my perspective now with, like, dating is, like, looking for more people that would, like, make a good teammate. You know what I mean? Of, like, that you would, like, you know, like, and like you were saying, like, with your wife, like, it's, sure, there's, like, that initial physical attraction and, like, you want, but, like, as you develop your relationship, like, you guys just, like, fit together. Like, you know, like, things, I've even noticed, like, people I work with on, like some of the content stuff or people I collaborate with at work, like, it's like, okay, like, I'm really good at this. They're not good at that. Like, they're really good at this. I suck at that. Like, it's cool that you can, like, complement each other in that way. So I think I'm looking for more of, like, building something like that. And, like, I just so I still have my 9-to-5 job on top of doing content, on top of doing comedy. And I feel like I really don't have time for anything that, like, might not be somewhat promising. You know?
Yeah.
And so I think, like, what's wrong with guys? I mean, I think, like, we're all, to an extent, like, have issues with commitment, whether it's like we're anxiously attached and, like, we want that too hard and too fast.
Okay.
Or, like, I think men are classically a bit more avoidant, where they're like, this bitch is gonna slow my roll, or I don't know how guys actually talk to each other, but, like, I don't know, you'd probably know better than me, like, being a man, and, like, I'm assuming you know, you have male friendships, and I know you're older than me, and your friends might be at different stages in life, but, like what do you see that happens in, like, people's brain of, like, why don't they want, like, I think we've moved away from a culture where it's like, you know, everyone's getting married when they're, like, 22, like, you know, and, like commitment and marriage, like, is always the end goal for people. Like,
it's weird. So, like, I would call myself, like, somebody from the outside looking in, because like, I'm not actively dating, obviously.
Yeah.
But, like,
just for the record, honey.
But you can see it change, because like, even when you watch Friends in the 90s, like, they would date casually, but they would get to know the person first and then hook up, right? And so I feel like it's become more transactional, right, where it's like, because my dating, like, especially in my Christian days, was like, if I didn't see it leading towards marriage, then I didn't want to waste the time, right? Like, I want to be a missionary in Africa, okay, bye, because I don't, so, like, why would I put us both through that, right? And I feel like people are kind of desperate to the point where they ignore red flags because they just don't want to be alone.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think sometimes it's easier. So, like, for me, like, taking a break from, like, kind of dating over the summer, and that, like, that's also made me realize that, like, oh, well, you know, I think I often use dating as, like, a distraction, where, like, doing this, like, break from dating has made me realize, like, okay, well, what I really want to do is, like, clean up my side of the street, make sure I'm good, like, work on building a life and a business and things that, like, I'm really excited and passionate about, that, like, somebody can, like, I'm excited to bring someone else into that, you know? Whereas I think sometimes we get caught of feeling like, oh, I feel kind of unsatisfied right now, like, guess I need a new boyfriend, you know? And then we externalize our happiness onto other people.
Oh, Hilary, you're so I feel like you're just, like, you're ready to meet this person, whoever they are.
I hope so. Are you listening?
Well, no, because it's like, when you talk to people about what they're looking for, or dating and stuff like that, and, like, and again, this is probably really, really Christian, but, like, people will say, I want to find somebody who's good for me, right? But what you're really saying is you want somebody who delivers things that, like, that you're expecting on your bucket list, rather than who's gonna be a good teammate.
Exactly.
How can I have something to offer to them?
And, like, you know, I mean, sure, I think we all have, like, maybe a checklist in our head of, like, things we want in someone, but, like, for me, like, I don't think my expectations for someone, like, I'm not asking someone to do anything that I'm not already doing.
Yes.
You know, in terms of being, like, kind, open, empathetic, like, pursuing your passions, like why would you also, and I just think too, like, and maybe this is, like, a kind of spiritual aspect too, that, like, for me, like, I'm like, you know what, like, I am going all in on, like, the things I love. I feel like I'm putting out good energy. Like, I'm excited about my life. And, like, I think naturally that'll just bring, like, the right people, the right connections, the right business connection, everything, you know, like, you just, if you feel like you're And I think like really like if you are doing what you feel like you're like meant to be doing,
yes,
then why wouldn't you meet like the perfect person like through that too? And I think
your
too,
orbit, you'll be in similar orbits, right?
Exactly, right? And I think too, like with anything, with any, you know, career, creative work, a person, right? Like no one's perfect. Nothing's perfect, right? Like there's always like a shit sandwich that you have to be able to take with like, okay, you know what? Like for me, I'm very well aware, like my great strengths, conversation, humor. I'm a great host. Like I'm very empathetic. Weaknesses, very disorganized.
Okay.
I was late to this. Like I wasn't actually like that late, guys, but like
fine.
I'm like stuff like that. Like I tend to overextend myself. I can be a bit scattered, right? And so like for someone who is like so by the book, I need a schedule, I need a whatever, like and I think I actually come across as very scheduled because I notice that's a weakness of mine. So I like overcompensate.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know for people who are like very like rigid in that sense, like we are not going to be a match. I'm so sorry. You know, like if I had an ex-boyfriend joke that like, oh, Hilary, I feel like every time you leave the house, you make 4 new best friends. And I do. And like, that is, I think, an attractive quality where you're like, oh my God, this person's so friendly. Great. Annoying as fuck when you're trying to leave a party and you're tired, you know? And so I think like, with anyone, right? Like you need to be like, okay, like that's but this is kind of annoying for me, right? And so like I think having a more like realistic perspective of like, I don't think like just to clarify, because I think we're using this language of like perfect person. I don't think that exists. No. And I think like the sense of like, you know, you could meet a perfect person for that time in your life, right? And if you're not able to like grow and shape together in similar ways, then okay, they're not your perfect person anymore, and that's okay, right? And like I think we all kind of hope that like our most recent breakup will be our last because it sucks.
Yes.
I've also broken up with somebody who I've lived with, and that like that's hot hell. Like I don't wish that upon anyone. Like that sucks like so bad.
I mean, it's not too dissimilar from a divorce.
Kind of in the sense of of like, you know, now you're like, okay, who gets the good spatula and like everything else, right?
And
like
the cat, right?
Like your children, your fur children, right? And I think too, just like seeing it from more of a perspective of like, okay, like that didn't like, I don't want to do that again. But like, I think I'm just trying to approach life and dating and everything with like this, like, do you know Brene Brown?
I know the name.
Yeah, she's a social worker and has a doctorate in social work and does a lot of work around like vulnerability. But she, in one of her books that I read recently, she talked about this concept of like soft fronts, strong backs, and just kind of like being soft and warm and open and loving, but also like a strong backbone and like we're not taking shit. We're not, you know, like assertiveness and like and I think like I love that. Right. Like I think that's like the perfect balance of where like I think sometimes I've been like too soft and too kind and you know I've been taken advantage of and then I feel resentful and whatever, or I've been too hard or too cold and I should have been more warm or I was too distrusting.
I worry about that like in comedy in the scene, like dude, like is my friendliness perceived as weakness? Like you know, like you wonder that, right?
I mean, for me, I think I just think that's who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm I think that's a strength of mine. And if other people think like, oh, Hilary's too friendly, like I'd be like, take the dick out of your ass. Like, what are you saying? Like, what are you even saying? Like, you're just, I think anytime, I think if someone's like, oh, you're too friendly, it's like, are you just jealous that you can't connect with people that well? Like, what is the belief there? Like, why don't you want someone to be friendly? Why would you not want that?
I agree. I'm gonna do one question and then we're gonna go to a lightning round.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, give me fatherhood advice.
Advice,
because I have 2 daughters. Ooh, we were talking about this at the beginning. I want to make sure we circle back to it.
How old are your daughters again?
11 and 8.
11 and 8. I think probably the best thing you could do as a girl dad would be to show them how trusting and kind and empathetic and sensitive men can be. Because I think, you know, we model a lot of our future relationships off of the relationships we have with our parents. And I think like just being present and being like, I have a really beautiful relationship with my dad.
Okay.
And he is someone who is just like, you know, I think I've seen him cry more than my mom kind of thing. Like he's just very like, I'm not saying you need to like start bawling in front of your kids, but I think like showing that a full range of emotion is beautiful for a man to experience. And just like not driving so hard. I think like any kid, like we just, you know, you want to be loved for who you are and be able to do what you love. And I mean, my dad, for example, like I never really felt like he treated me different than my brother. Like if my brother was like signing up for skating, I could sign up for skating also. Like
Yes.
there was never like, he was such a in his like such a big believer of just like authenticity.
Yes.
Actually, like that is like I think where for me where that comes from. Like he is like one of the most authentic people I've
Yeah.
ever met. Sometimes to a fault.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think like the best thing you can do is just kind of like leading by examples, and I think like being able to be there for kids, and I think too, like, you know, your daughters are gonna have boyfriends and they're gonna break their hearts and they're gonna be whatever, and like, you know, you don't it's not necessarily your job to be the protector and the controller, because I think like you always want to be that. Like,
well, I like the parent. I think I was talking about it before. Like, there's the two parenting styles. Is one is the engineer, which is you forcing them to become the person you want them to be. And then there's the shepherd, which is to protect them in safe pastures as they explore the world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I want them to be who they are. I want them to find, like, the only thing that upsets me is when they don't believe in themselves.
Yes.
That's the thing that really really is like, I believe that you can do this if you practice consistently.
Yeah.
And I'm always like bringing, like, you wanted to do cartwheels, you practiced for weeks, and then you did it because you practiced and you could apply that to anything you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
I think getting excited about your kids' accomplishments means a lot to you know what I mean? Like, you're thinking like, cartwheel, whatever, I don't have time for that, I gotta go, whatever. No, like, you should really like celebrate that.
They worked
like,
hard. I want to celebrate those things.
Yeah.
That's why I do it in comedy too. People like, I don't think of myself as a dad, and people in comedy correct me very quickly.
I feel like you're like known as like the dad of comedy.
Yeah,
like,
am I? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I see your name all this, I'm like, oh, I'm on the show with my dad tonight. Like,
and because I encourage people too. I'm like, that was great. Like, good
I
job.
know. Yeah. But I think that's like evidence of like, you're just like warmth and like kind heart that, like, you know, I'm sure you had that before you were even a dad. Like,
no, well, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. No, I don't think I had a great dad, but okay. I just like, encouragement goes so far.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I want to be the person in that person's story that like helped them move forward.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, there are people I think should quit comedy, but I never want to be the person who tells somebody to quit.
No. They'll figure out that's a long, hard journey. Yeah. Each person needs to take for themselves.
So. Yeah. Well, that was good. Thank you. Okay. You ready for this lightning round?
I'm ready.
I have these, I have questions. They're fun. Okay. Great. They're fast. Okay. Childhood crush.
Taylor Lautner.
Okay. Did you have a family nickname?
Haley.
Okay. Are you a good driver?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Where do you still want to visit?
Argentina.
Disney movies, overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Do you collect anything?
Broken hearts. No, I'm just kidding.
Give me a recent win and a recent loss.
Recent win. I am getting a raise at work.
Nice.
Recent loss. I don't want to say this is a loss because this is a win. One of my best friends just got engaged.
Sure.
It's not a loss. It's very exciting. I love her fiance.
For them.
Yeah. But I'm not going to lie. There's an immature little part of my brain that's like, you're fucking taking my best friend away from me. You know?
Okay.
But not a loss. Not a loss.
Okay.
But also a loss.
Okay.
But not a loss. But also very much a loss.
Okay. And wins.
But not a loss.
Gotcha.
Not a loss.
Finish this sentence. Doing comedy is
the most beautiful thing, to be able to share laughter with the world.
What's for dinner tonight?
Pasta.
Let's see here. Oh, okay. What was your most played music in high school versus now?
Taylor Swift, and it's still Taylor Swift.
Okay.
My music taste peaked when I was 12, and I've seen no reason to deviate from that.
That's so funny. The last question: are rats cute?
No. Are rats cute? No. Have you had anyone say yes to that?
This is the first time I asked it.
Oh.
I try to change up the lightning round questions.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Great. This is fun. I feel like we went way over an hour, but we'll see.
Fix it in post.
Yeah. No, it's fine. We'll harvest it for clips.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Well, bye everybody. Thanks, Hilary.
Bye. Thanks for having me.